the other day against the Jacksonville Jaguars. That you get yourself out to a 22-0 lead, and then you have to hold on for dear life against a bad football team. That at the beginning of this win streak, you were pounding yourselves on the chest for beating the Cleveland Browns by 4 points at home. I just have the feeling that this is too much of a roller coaster team, Joe, that I'm going to believe in them consistently down the stretch.
Can we not believe in this Philadelphia team, or are they starting to turn the corner? Which one is it? That's Chris Carlin on Carlin versus Joe here on 97.3 ESPN. Says too many red flags. You know, you beat Cleveland, you beat the Giants, you barely beat Jacksonville. You barely beat Cleveland, by the way.
Cincinnati
was a good win. So it's a hard read over those 4 games. John McMullen, Birds 365. You got that 4-game sample, and now we're ready to go into the next group of games. Highly important this week to knock Dallas kind of out, keep pace with Washington, and then Washington on Thursday night. And, John, this team now is kind of seems like they're finding who they are, whether they've done it impressively or not at this moment.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, we've been through this before in 2022 when they went to the Super Bowl. And, you know, there were so many people who basically said, you know, they haven't beaten anybody. You know, who's to beat, as you bring up all the time, Mike? If you think nobody's good, can't beat anybody good. And, you know, if you look at coming into this game at Dallas, Eagles haven't won there in many years. Typically, you know, Dallas has been a great regular season team, 12 wins, 12 wins, 12 wins, and all of a sudden they fall off the table. They don't have a quarterback. So if they go in there and snap that streak, they didn't beat anybody. And then you get to Washington and you have a game where who knows? If they lose to Pittsburgh, you know, people say they don't mean anything. So you can only knock the pin down in front of you. They've been able to do that. They're at the top of the NFC, right in the mix behind the Detroit Lions. Hard to win in this league. You know, when I hear your clip there and they say, well, you did this against Jacksonville, you did this against Cleveland. Do you watch other games? I mean, this happens all the time in the NFL. Guys, you know, teams letting up off the gas, whatever you want to talk, and it ends up being a one-score game at the end, and you say, what happened? It's not just the Eagles.
And I think what we lose sight of, John, is the parity in this league. It also, when you look at a team's record, you deem a 2-7 team, they're terrible. When in the reality, the difference between the team that's 5-3 and 2-7, the records look different. But the roster talent isn't all that different. I mean, they're usually pretty close. It's a player here, a group there, and that's why we have these games that are always so close. But I think when you look at the records of teams, people think they stink or they're not any good when the talent of the rosters is not all that different.
Yeah, I mean, Jacksonville's a perfect example of that because the way things have gone in the season for them. I know they came into the season thinking this was their most talented team ever, and Shad Khan even mentioned that. And they thought they were in for a special season, and they thought they'd be battling with Houston for that division crown, and things went off the rails, and they are where they are. But, as you saw with Trayvon Walker, as you saw with Josh Hines-Allen, they got good players. And, Brian Thomas has been the best rookie receiver in football. Christian Kirk is a good receiver, happened to get injured. Everybody's got good players in this league. Everybody. Even Carolina.
Well, you say it a lot. You say it a lot, John. Sometimes it's also when you play a team, right? You might have played a team now, they've lost 5 in a row, because they played with a couple offensive linemen hurt. Dallas right now, they've got a couple of key defensive players that have missed a bunch of games of their defense. Now, I don't know that Dallas is all of a sudden going to turn into, the doomsday defense, but there are factors into why a team's record gets to where it gets to. And you look at their record, you say, man, this team stinks. Well, they stink because they played 3 games without this guy, or they played 3 out of 4 without that guy.
Yeah, and you saw it earlier this year with the Eagles struggling, and the fact that playing without A.J. Brown for 3 games, and everybody's saying, "What's wrong with the offense? What's wrong with the offense?" Well, maybe it's as simple as that. And in Tampa, the worst game of the season, they didn't have A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Lane Johnson. Did it really surprise that many people that they didn't look that effective in Tampa?
Right.
And Micah Parsons is probably going to play this week. He was at practice yesterday. Deron Bland may be back. Much more iffy with him. Those are 2 all-pro level players on defense. So, if Micah shows back up and he has a big game and the Eagles struggle a little bit more than people expected offensively, you're going to hear about that. And people are going to say, well, Dallas has done this without him. Dallas has done that without him. Yeah, and now he's back. And that makes a difference. So anytime you're not playing with arguably one of the best players in the NFL, as you've already seen it from the Eagles' perspective with A.J., it makes a big difference.
Well, just think about when the Eagles forget A.J. and Devontae, don't play without when they play without Lane Johnson, just how that changes things for them. And now flip it over to defense for Dallas, taking one guy off the field, how much that changes things. We'll get into that a little bit. 4 straight wins by Philly. They're outscoring opponents, John, by 13.5 points per game during the win streak. That's the second best point differential in the league other than Detroit, who's beating teams by 22 points a game. So the 13.5 points per game in a league where everything's a one-score game, they are taking care of business and getting some things done here. But how do they build upon that and become, a team that doesn't have to have a Lawrence interception at the end of the game to bail them out or hang on to beat a Cleveland team 20-16? What's that next step for this team?
Well, in some ways in Jacksonville, look, I think they were dominant for a large portion of the game. They were up 22-0. They had given up 36 yards to the Jags offensively. And then they gave up the touchdown drive, which you can kind of, to expect to keep up that pace defensively an entire game is probably a little bit unrealistic. And then the real key is the Saquon Barkley fumble. And whether you agree with the call or not, that's an outlier play. And that's the play that put the Jags back in the game. So if they didn't call the fumble, we're probably not having any of these discussions. It's probably an easy win, 2-score win. And I'm sure it's Philadelphia, and I'm in Philadelphia, as you can hear with this incredible noise at all times. But that play, that's what made that game close. So you say, how do you make sure you're not going to be in that position where one Trevor Lawrence throw can lose you a football game? You can't. Sometimes the ball doesn't bounce your way. Sometimes it's as simple as an official's call. Sometimes it is the wrong bounce. If Andre Cisco would have gotten an interception, it would have been even worse. And maybe they actually lose the game, and it would have been a catastrophic loss. Nick's still not getting fired, but it would have been a catastrophic loss. These teams are not as bad as people think they are.
John McMullen, Birds 365, Sports Illustrated. Is Dallas as bad as we think they are?
No, not Eagles fans, no. Compared to what they've been, as I said, with the team, 12 wins, 12. They're not that team. But again, you're starting to get some of the players back. Micah will be back. Deron Bland, if he's not back this week, he's probably going to be back next week. DeMarcus Lawrence is coming down the pike. Right there, those are 3 all-pro level players on defense. Literally, all-pro level players. So, when you're not playing with those guys, it's similar to what I said about the Tampa Bay game. And you mentioned Lane. Well, they didn't play without A.J., they didn't play without Devontae, and they didn't play without Lane in the same game. So, yeah, they didn't play well. So a lot of that is what's going on. In Dallas now it gets further complicated. by losing the quarterback as well. So, yeah, this is a perfect time to play the Dallas Cowboys. The only thing you could have hoped for is that it would have taken another week for Micah Parsons, but it looks like he's going to play. You're never going to find a better situation probably going into a place that, as I said, they haven't had a ton of success with.
All right, before we kind of take a deeper look at this game, there was 11 guys. Now, I know a lot of them were rest, but there were some guys. Devontae Smith sprung up with a hamstring yesterday. What was his status today, and is there anything to be concerned about there?
No, I mean, we just got out of practice, and most of the guys were back. Devontae was practicing at least in some portion. We'll have to see whether it was most likely it's going to be limited, but he certainly was back. Nolan Smith was back. Ben Van Sumen was back at practice. He's probably not out of the protocol, but those are the three guys that did not practice at all in the walkthrough yesterday, which was an estimation. But and then you had a whole bunch of limited guys, and they were all out there participating in some fashion as well. Saquon Barkley looked like he was resting again, and the Eagles have kind of mentioned that pretty consistently. The load management for Saquon Barkley is taking place during the week. So he doesn't do a lot at practice, and you're going to see that for the rest of the year, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And they're trying, because he's getting so many touches in the games, they're trying to limit the pitch count in practice, so to speak.
What about A.J. Brown? I know you said an estimation yesterday, but in your estimation, will he be ready to go on Sunday?
Yeah, he was limited yesterday, probably be limited today. I'm just guessing. But, yeah, he's out there. He's practicing, so that's a very good sign. I would expect him to play. And Darius Slay as well, who was out. Dallas Goedert was full, so he's expected to be back, and he told me that after the Jacksonville game. I saw him in the hallway. Said his fourth game, you're coming back, and he said, "Yep, Dallas and Dallas." So that he's going to be back. So even though the injury list was very long, and I think it frightened some people, and then the offensive line.
Yeah, you had three guys on that line. Three-fifths of the line was on there yesterday.
Yeah, and they were all back today. So. Just sort of load management at this stage. And remember, they're not only playing the Cowboys on Sunday, then they have the quick week back-to-back Washington here on Thursday night. So that probably factors into it as well.
Dallas doesn't, the offensive situation for them. They don't have a running back. They don't run the ball. They're going to go with Cooper Rush here. They don't have a lot of weapons in the pass game. So if you're Vic Fangio, I guess CeeDee Lamb is the obvious concern here, but is this a week where you feel pretty confident about your defense kind of continuing to grow here, or is this a Dallas – I know it sounds crazy to say it, but a Dallas offense that might catch you off guard?
Well, I don't think they can keep up the pace that they've been playing at realistically over the past two games.
You talk about the defense?
Yeah, the defense. I mean, it's just not realistic. So from that standpoint, if you want to grade it against how they gave up, 215, I forget what the number was. They gave up 215 yards last week. I mean, that's not sustainable in the modern NFL. So depends how you look at it. But, yeah, I expect them to continue to play well on defense. I think the first test will be Washington. Some unique. And, from Washington's standpoint, they're probably a little bit concerned about what Vic's going to unfurl against a young quarterback, because he tends to be very good when it comes to confusing young quarterbacks. But from the Eagles' perspective, they'll say, all right, this guy's dynamic. This guy's going to be a really, really big test. It's different if Dak Prescott's out there on Sunday, but Cooper Rush is limited. He's a backup quarterback.
Well, the Cowboy defense, as you've talked about, they will get Parsons back most likely, but a lot of guys out. They are allowing 41.8 points per game in home games this year. It's the kind of game you asked Jalen Hurts about the deep ball. That was an interesting exchange there. Who says they can't? Oh, they. And he gave you a nice little smile. Is this a week where they should be able to take those big explosive play shots down the field and not have to rely on Saquon, even though this is a team that doesn't stop the run at all?
Yeah, the Eagles, and they've been pretty consistent. I think from the standpoint of this is if you listen to Jalen, if you listen to Nick, if you listen to Kellen, they are all on the same page. And then, if you listen to Lane Johnson or the offensive lineman, people get hyped up about that, Philadelphia, and they want to run the football. And the Eagles want to run the football, but they want to run it effectively. And it's Jalen he gets this question every week, and he says the same thing, which is we want to be able to do everything. And by that, he means, we should be able to throw the ball at a high level. We should be able to run the ball at a high level, and we'll take advantage of what, if Mike Zimmer comes in there because of the year Saquon Barkley's having and says, you know what, I'm not going to let this guy beat me. Well, then they're going to throw the ball. And if they come in like the mentality of most people before they've gotten Saquon is, I can't let A.J. Brown beat me, well, then they're going to run the football.
Yeah.
So I think it's really as simple as that, but people want to hear they want to stick with something. They don't want to stick with something. That's the whole point. They want to be able to take advantage of whatever somebody is trying to take away.
Well,
they want to go in the opposite direction.
Does the first 15 scripted plays give us any insight on what they think they want to do for that day?
No, because, and Doug Peterson, I think people would I think people would be shocked about how quickly you get off script in most games. Most games you don't even get through those 15 plays. And you're off script by play 3. If you're in 3rd and long, you're off script. Bang, right there.
Yep.
And as the Eagles have been a poor first drive team this season, they've generally been off script by play 3. So it doesn't really give you now if they go on a big, long 13-play drive where you never see 3rd down, yeah, that might give you an indication of what they want to do. But I think most don't realize how quickly you get off script in most of these games.
All right, John McMullen, of course, Eagles and Cowboys. You got the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. A win, Philly keeps pace with Washington at the worst. A loss, you kind of keep Dallas, I guess, somewhat invested in the season, but a loss would really decimate them. It's Cooper Rush, it's Jalen Hurts, and, of course, you can listen to the action right here on 97.3 ESPN. We'll have plenty more on this game, of course, as the Eagles and Cowboys play on Sunday at 4:25 on 97.3 ESPN. John, thanks, buddy.
All right, thanks, Mike.